This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 110.
Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Brian Deemer.
I'm Kevin Moyer.
I'm Jamie D.
I'm Peter Rios.
You know, it reminds me of an issue of Spider-Man I did.
Welcome to the show. This episode of Comic Geek Speak is sponsored by pixelstrips.com, 20 comics and growing. Pixelstrips.com, a web-based comic community, has added 3 new diverse comics. Greatest Con, Ted, Enter the Purple Gerbil, and Nikki Savage that offer a great read for everyone. The comic Ted, Enter the Purple Gerbil springs from the warped mind of the newest Brit to join pixelstrips.com. Nikki Savage is a dark superhero story about a good man who is pushed to his limits and finds himself willing to do anything to seek revenge, allowing himself to become the product of genetic enhancement to destroy the darkness that took his soul. And our newest manga comic, Greatest Con, from the creator of Corp Agents, Alison Amato. Stop by pixelstrips.com for great comics, learn from in-depth tutorials like our current lettering how-to, or stop by the new merchandise area to pick up a poster or shirt from your favorite comic. While you're at the site, check out the pixelstrips.com podcast for web and print comic news and reviews, marketing ideas for your site, interviews, software, and podcasts of interest, and webcomic tips and tricks. Support the artists, support the site, and help bring more great comics online. Pixelstrips.com, webcomics, 1 pixel at a time. And the guy who runs Pixelstrip.com does some coloring for Athena Voltaire, so, you know.
Kevin Volo.
That's right. So it's all, it's a very incestuous family here.
I prefer the Circle of Life.
Hey, I want to give a shout out, and I meant to do this in our previous episode, and as we were recording this, it's Monday. Zane Townsend on the forum posted a little thread about his fiance was going in for surgery, and he wanted us to keep her in our thoughts. And I'm sure by the time this episode airs, we're going to hear back from him. But I just wanted to give him a shout out to let him know that we're thinking of her and him.
Cool. And this is the last chance reminder: New York Comic Con. If you hear this on Thursday, it starts tomorrow. So make sure you come. Say hello to us. Say hello to Mike Norton. Say hello to every person who ever drew comics or wrote comics or had anything to do with comics, because they're all going to be there, I think.
And make sure you say hi to the people who were nice to us and have talked to us, including, I guess, Sal at Mercury Comics.
Sam Vera of Crazy Comics will be there.
Anybody you run into that you've heard on the show or whatever,
Yep.
Go up and say hi and tell them you heard us on the show.
Top Shelf, go to the Top Shelf booth and talk to them.
Devils do. They've been great about sponsoring us, so we want to return the favor.
And also, at the MoCA, the Museum of Comic Cartoon Art, starting Saturday is a new exhibit featuring a retrospective of Todd McFarlane art. So check that out. If you haven't ever been to the MoCA, it's a good time to go. It'll be a big flurry of activity there this weekend. And for our supersized episode here, we have CB Cebulski, editor / talent scout / writer / manga expert.
I say manga know-it-all.
That's right. And it's a very fascinating interview.
Excuse me. There is a little bit of an F-bomb in about the first 2 minutes, so watch.
Yeah, the rest of the interview is very tame, but we test the limits right in the very beginning.
Definitely another nice guy.
Yeah, he's cool. And it's easier to probably say what he doesn't do rather than what he does do.
Yeah.
He's not Stan Lee. That's pretty much it. Everything else he's done.
So here we present to you CB Cebulski. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you perfectly.
All right, great. With me is Kevin, Jamie, and Peter.
Hey, guys, how are you?
Hey.
Pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
And we'd like to welcome you to the show.
Well, no, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Like I was saying earlier, and I've never done a a podcast before, so it's all new to me. So if you want to talk me through it, please do. But I guess I just talk and answer questions.
Yeah,
right?
basically, I mean, it's free reign. There's no FCC or anything, so you don't have to worry about what you say. And
So you have to swear. That's
Yeah, well, see, my mother's big on following my budding comic career, so if I send her the link and she listens to it somehow, if she could figure it out, she's going to be upset if I say the word like fuck or shit or something.
There you go. Christened.
Yeah.
so, before we get started, for the benefit of our listeners who may not be familiar with your work, you want to just give us a quick rundown of a handful of stuff that you've done?
A handful of stuff. All right. Comic fan for life. Started when I was a kid. Always wanted to get into comics. Eventually, that led me into areas of Japanese stuff. Went to Japan, lived there for 4 years, and came back. Worked at Central Park Media, where I launched the CPM manga line. It's back in '96. There we brought out books like Plastic Little, Record of Lodoss War, Slayers, shoujo manga like Aquarium and stuff like that. From there, I went on to start Fanboy Entertainment, which was my own kind of company. Worked with artists directly, like more Japanese artists like Kiyasumiya, Yoshitoshi Abe, Renji Murata. Brought over books like Kia's Silent Mobius. We did Dark Angel in color through Image, which is an original series. And then also worked with some kind of creators here from Canada and the States, like Dan Brereton. We did some Nocturnals prints and things, and worked with Jay Torres and Takeshi Miyazawa on a book called Sidekicks, which then moved to Oni. And then went over to Marvel, where as an editor I worked mostly on the Ultimate line, on Ultimates with Millar and Hitch, Ultimate Spider-Man with Baggs and Bendis, Ultimate X-Men through all the creators, be it the Kuberts, through Millar's run, then through Bendis and Finch, and a lot of different other books like X-Men Unlimited and things. Helped with launch Runaways with Brian Vaughan, and eventually went on to be more the Marvel talent manager, which it basically means I fixed any problems that happened with any kind of talent. Boozed, schmoozed, wooed talent to come over, helped everybody through the whole crush-in thing, get set up at Marvel, and then anytime, Pencil had a problem with an inker, I would help out, smooth over things. If, someone didn't like their colorist, if editor was having a problem that they couldn't deal with directly, I would take care of it, and vice versa. If the talent was unhappy with anything that was going on at Marvel and didn't feel comfortable with their editors, they knew they could trust me to get the problems solved, under the radar, or help them get through anything they needed. So that's in a nutshell.
So you're like the vice principal of
Yeah,
high school.
pretty much, exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Well,
Joe being the principal.
I was going to say principal,
you got
but
the
then
superintendents and the board up there too. But
yeah, I remember my junior high vice principal, and I'm like, no, you know what? He's the vice principal, the guy that you don't want to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the question we always ask then is, how did you start reading comics, and what did you enjoy as a kid?
Started reading comics, American comics, back right when I was a kid. My dad would always take me. We'd go to get a haircut. It was my birthday this past weekend.
Oh, well,
So
happy birthday.
I drove by the actual place, like that place that we used to get haircuts by random chance, because I hadn't thought of that joint forever. And sure enough, there was the haircut place. Michael Anthony's still there, and there was the little mom and pop convenience shop next to it that still, we didn't go in, which is where I used to buy my comics. But we used to go get my haircut. My dad would buy me comics back then. And what was early then was Byrne and Claremont were just starting on X-Men. That was what really hooked me. I mean, those were just, that was the key for me, was like the Byrne and Claremont X-Men run. And then from there, ended up following anything they did. And, I didn't even know who the creators were back then. I was 5, 6 years old in 1976, 77. And then followed pretty much characters. I was big into, Brave and the Bold. I loved Green Lantern and Green Arrow back then. Always into the Fantastic Four. Loved the Hulk, 276. I don't even know when that came out. Was a key issue for me. I don't know why, because I just loved the cover with the Cobalt Man. Loved when the Hulk fought the Jack of Hearts. From there, I just a lot of times just followed characters. I got into like Rom through the Jack of Hearts, because I remember seeing Jack of Hearts on the cover of a Rom issue years later. I was like, oh my God, I got to get this guy. So. And pretty much just, and from there it just grew. And then when I, got a little bit, older and started becoming a serious collector following creators, I had all my Marvel subscriptions. Everything would come in the bad brown paper wrap, and it'd all get destroyed when the mailman
Yes.
put them in the mailbox.
Yeah.
But I would run down there every month or every week, whatever it was. I can't even remember when they got delivered, and just rip through stuff. Alpha Flight I was huge on. Just really anything that came up back then I loved. So I'm trying to think. I hung up posters. I was back in my room at my parents' place this past week, and I just remember there was that old, I would tear out the ads and hang them up on the ceiling, and some of the ads were still up there, and it was for Power Pack, Legion of Superheroes. There was that old Aquaman series where he went to the blue costume for a little bit. Just trying to think what else was hanging up there. I don't even remember now.
I'm amazed.
I just remember I looked up Teen Titans. I was big into the Wolfman Perez Teen Titans. So.
It's just funny that you actually admit to having a Power Pack, thing hanging on your ceiling.
Yeah, I know, huh? No, Power Pack for me is I just love the pack. So
They keep having little comebacks at Marvel. They keep doing they keep them alive.
Yeah, I just wish. I mean, I'm big on. The last time I consider Julie Power was in Vaughn's Excelsior. In the last the last arc of the Runaways book.
Yeah.
And that for me was great. And I just wish they'd get Power Pack kind of back into continuity, not the little side project. I love what Sumarak and Gudi Hito are doing with the Power Pack series and Power Pack X-Men, and coming up I think we got Power Pack Avengers, but I just want them in continuity, see them interacting with other Marvel characters, current age, kind of, all grown up kind of, so to speak.
I think that's probably very low on Marvel's list of things to do. What do you think?
Yeah, I go up there every now and then, and I still, push for it a little bit, make jokes about it, but yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath.
I miss those days of the in-house ads that you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm tired of seeing bike commercials and video
Honda car
game.
commercials.
What? Which one?
Honda car.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are crazy. I mean, there's that new one the ultraviolet ad is there now, and that's not
yeah.
bad because it's Mila Jovovich. But if I see it one more time, I feel like it's in every comic book that's out there.
Yeah.
And there's all those crazy ones where it's there's someone's face is in half, and half's deformed and half's normal, and then there's the one with the girl with the long arms and stuff. It's don't do drugs, kids.
So how do you parlay all that reading into professional work?
It's kind of a random story, but the early part of it was another thing. While I was growing up reading all these American comics, my mother was sick, and this was again 30 years ago. She had psoriasis, which is kind of a common thing now, but back then, they didn't have all these salts and creams and lotions and radical, hormone treatments or whatever it was to fix that kind of stuff. And she'd go around to doctors, and they could never figure out what she had wrong with her. And eventually, she went to see a Japanese doctor, and it was Michio Kuchi, and he recommended she go on kind of a more Japanese diet. And eventually, kind of today, you'd call it a macrobiotic diet, I think, So, but back then, it was me and my family, except for my dad, she put us on a strict macrobiotic diet. So we were not drinking dairy. We were eating, seafoods and shiitake mushrooms, and no meat, anything like that. It was pretty much all vegetarian, and we hated it when we were kids. No one wanted to come near us. No one wanted to come over to visit because we didn't have any snack food. We always got made fun of for the lunches we brought to school, and it was tough. But one of those things was every week we had to go to this Japanese food store. It was called Fuji Mart in Stamford, Connecticut, I think. And while my mother did the shopping, she would drop, me, my brother, my sister, whoever went with her that day, in kind of the, section where there were other Japanese kids. They would leave their parents, and they had manga and different stuff lying around. And back then, I had no idea what manga was. It was just these other kids were reading comics, so I'd look at it and be like, Ma, what's this? Oh, that's Japanese. You can't read that stuff. What's it say? I don't know what it says. It's Japanese. So eventually, I wanted them, and she would buy them for me just as coloring books and stuff. So, and then it had always stuck in my head, I want to study Japanese. I want to learn what this stuff says. I love American comics. This is comics too. And then, that's when the kind of first animation wave hit the States with, we had Speed Racer and then Star Blazers, and then I was big into, Robotech. And that just always oh, this is Japanese, so I want to study it. So I started independently studying Japanese in high school in, the 80s. And then I knew when I got to college that's what I wanted to major in. Ended up majoring in Japanese studies, learned how to speak Japanese, learned all about Japanese culture, history, art, wrote my thesis on, manga as a legitimate art form, and then eventually ended up going to Japan, went over as a teacher, but with the intent of, eventually getting into comics. Hooked up with some artists and some publishers, did some freelance work over there, translation, some rights management, freelance while I was teaching, and eventually got headhunted by John O'Donnell at Central Park Media to come over and get their manga line up and running. So that he got my foot in the door here, and then with the manga boom and my love of American comics, I was able to make all kinds of contacts across the industry to kind of act as a bridge between, manga and American comics. It's one of the things I did at Central Park Media was really push to get American artists on variant covers for manga books, which back then seemed crazy, but we had like Dan Brereton, Jeff Matsuda, Dave Mack, a bunch of different people were doing samples or doing variant covers on stuff like that, because I was really trying to cross the bridge between my two loves and manga and American comics. And we found it was harder than expected, but eventually that moved me into more connections in the American comic universe, and eventually ended up talking to Joe Quesada for years, and then when Bill Jemas took over Marvel, him and Joe eventually asked me to come on as originally a consultant to help out with Japanese stuff to get Marvel more into that market, and then that led to me getting a full-time job as an editor there. So.
Wow, so from your mother's illness all the way up to working for Marvel, that's a
exactly,
very convoluted tale.
So from sickness to Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That's amazing, though. I mean,
yeah, it's kind of just a random story, but it's one of those things where it's just, you keep at it, you don't forget. And, originally I thought I was going to grow up to be an electrician. I mean, my grandfather was an electrician, my dad was an electrician, I had my apprentice license, I spent my summers on trucks, just with different electrical companies. And it was just, I never really thought it was something I could make a living at. But, eventually, sometime in high school, my dad was just like, don't follow in the footsteps of your grandfather and me just because you think you have to. He was more along the lines of, you should really follow your dream and do what you want to do. I'd rather see you happy in life than doing something you don't like just to please us, which always stuck with me. I'm a big kind of follow your dreams kind of guy. So, and my dad instilled that in me, and I really think that, it worked for me, so why the hell couldn't it work for other people?
Now, did you enjoy your time in Japan?
Oh, I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Is it hard to be in the United States? Does it call you back?
Yeah, it used to call me back a lot more. When I was at Central Park Media, I used to go over 2-3 times a year, and then when I was at Fanboy, when my wife and I were running our own company, we would go over, bi-monthly, so we were there 6 to 8 times a year, and it was great. And then when I chose to go to Marvel, that was one of the things I knew was given up, was all the time I would spend over there. And I would go once to twice a year, usually once on business and then once on pleasure for the holidays to visit family or, to see friends and hang out over there. But we hadn't been back for 2 years now. We just got back in January. We finally went for a month for the holidays, for Christmas, New Year's, and then the beginning of January, and it was just great to be back. I mean, I love it over there. It's kind of tough because you spend time between both, but thanks to the internet and stuff like that, it's the world's smaller, so I don't miss it as much as I used to when I didn't have as readily access to books and manga and things I could buy. So.
Well, that's cool. Now, and your wife enjoys it as well?
Yeah. Oh, my wife's Japanese. So
okay.
We met over there when I was in college, actually. So I did my junior year abroad in Japan in 1991, 92, and then we met over there that year. We've been together on. That's another long story, which comic fans don't want to hear about. But yeah, we've been together ever since. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So what can American comics learn from what they do over there with Japan and manga and things like that?
It's tough, and I think American comics have grown a lot from where they were 10 or 15 years ago, and a lot of people can say that American comics should learn a little bit more about diversity in not just telling superhero comics, but I think that, in my opinion, looking at it, because I read everything. I mean, I don't read just Marvel and DC. I mean, I read everything that comes out, and I think through the independent movement, what we've learned over the the past few years is that there is a market for everything out there. I mean, just, from something like, Brian Wood's Local, which is probably my favorite book coming out these days. I think that's a perfect example of, what we can learn from manga. It's just books about real people in different situations, And I think we have learned a lot, but I think the thing going forward is, we're so set on continuity, and not that it's a bad thing. I'm not talking about in, kind of superhero sense, not like, Mary Jane broke her arm and this issue had that kind of continuity, but like we want to see everything continue. We're big on everything progressing. Like if comic readers know there's an end coming, they necessarily don't like to continue reading. But I think, and what I'm saying is, I guess what I'm trying to say is that comics have a beginning and they have an end, and as long as you know where the end is in your comics, there's no reason to keep going just for kind of like money's sake. If the creator wants to move on to something else, they should have the right to be able to move on to something else. They shouldn't keep going just because the publisher or someone's going to force them into it. And that's a big thing for me, is that, the creators telling the stories they want to tell just for the love of it, not for the actual money of it, so to speak. Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know what you mean about being scared away sometimes when things are at an end. I haven't really discovered the manga that's right for me yet. I've been experimenting a little bit, and I hope to find something. But I'll go to Borders and I'll look through, and there'll be all these series, and they look cool, and I go, well, this one's only 12 trades worth. It's like, but then it's over. So it's like I get started, and then it's just going to end, and it's like I feel like, well, I want to get invested in something. I want years and years and years of reading, in front of me, and so it's definitely limiting myself, because I should just say, well, if it's good, I can just read 8 trades worth, and it'll be 8 great trades, and then I can put it on the shelf and be happy that I read it.
Yep, and I always looked at manga from the visual sense and from the way that it's published as more of like movies. Your favorite movie could just be one episode. It has a beginning and has an end. I mean, there's some that go on forever, be it Bond or Star Trek or stuff like that, and there's merits to be had in both. But I've always viewed manga more as like movies. Like, here's a story that has a beginning and an end, and I'm going to like it for what it's worth, and I'm always going to be able to go back and read it, just like I'm able to go back and take out that DVD and watch the movie again. So
now, what about, other than the content, what about the distribution methods of manga? I have never been to Japan, but I've heard many stories, and we've discussed this with other people, where they, there are giant phone book-sized things that collect, on cheap paper that collect immense amounts of issues that, that's a weekly publication or whatever, as opposed to where we seem to be really stuck with the monthly comic format, and we don't do the compendium thing very well over here. And are there lessons to be learned there, or is that a cultural thing?
It's tough to say, and I've gone through this back and forth at every publisher I've worked with, and I'm big on the anthology format. Like, I love what the Japanese do with, the monthly, weekly phone books, and I love what Viz is doing with Shonen Jump. I love what Dark Horse did with Super Manga Blast. And I think there is something to be had there. I mean, I've been seeing a lot of anthology things pop up recently, and I've been following because there's an anthology that I want to do and have plans to do. But I think the interesting thing about the Japanese anthologies that's never been translated here is that they take a lot of different chances with a lot of different genres, a lot of different creators, a lot of different styles. And in the back of every anthology that comes out, they have their little survey card, self-addressed postcard that kids can rip out and rank everything that's in there. Which did you like best? Why? And they turn it in, and I think the return rate on this stuff is 75 to 80% of everyone that buys these mangas, no matter their age, how old, turn in the survey cards, because it's like a lottery at the end. You could win a limited edition, or you could win a page from the artist, or you could win an original sketch, or one of 100 people win Game Boy Advances or whatever like that, because they want to promote the return of these survey cards so they have actual feedback from the readers about what is working and what's not. And that's how they base what stays in the monthly anthology and what doesn't. It's one of the reasons some of them have gone on so long, like something like Dragon Ball, and a lot of these series have gone on for years because the creator wanted to keep doing it, and it was the most popular one for 10 years. They're not going to end those series. And it's also why some series just end all of a sudden. The creator get called up, you got to end your series in 2 months because you're at the bottom of the list. Only 5% of the kids said they're your most you're the most popular manga, and I think that's a lesson to be learned. And just I know it's hard logistically here because of printing methods and cost and keeping costs down and postage and things like that. Who knows what regulations are there. But one of the things that I've been looking at doing in researching my anthology is putting something like that online. It'd be so easy to just put one page with a website in the back that would say, go to this website, please tell us your thoughts, answer these quick questions, be entered in some kind of drawing for, whatever the prize is going to be. I think that's a way to just get honest feedback. And, we do have blogs and message boards and, all kinds of different ways to get reader feedback, but it's nothing that's really concrete. It's nothing that you can statistically say, this worked and this didn't. And I think if we establish that kind of method, anthologies could become a little bit more successful because publishers would be able to cater more to the taste of their readership, so to speak.
Yeah, that's really cool. Because personally, I think that would be for me, that would be a very pleasant future if I could go to the comic store and I could buy one book that had, Captain America, Daredevil, Moon Knight, one of the Spider-Man titles or whatever, and just buy one monthly book that had 6 or 8 comics in it. That would be fantastic, and it would be cheaper because it would be bound together, and they'd save money on the printing process and all that, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
I would be very happy. Now, I know there are a lot of people, and probably some people in this room, who'd be like, never, ever do I want to see that. I want my monthly comics. So I think that's where the industry's butting heads.
Yeah, I straddle both because, every Wednesday for me, it's down at that new shop. Just you open that comic and there's that smell, and you're there with the other people who or it's kind of a kindred spirit. It's like an experience, and there's always going to be people who love those floppies, but I go for all of it actually. I do the floppies, I do the anthologies, and then I buy the manga trades and the graphic novels. I mean, I'm hardcore that way, but it's just comic reading for me is not just a thing about about the stories. It's kind of as cheesy as it sounds. It's almost like a way of life because that's what I do. It's what I've always done.
Well, we can believe me. Everyone in this room understands exactly what you're talking about.
I guess one thing we learned from a previous episode, somebody threw out a notion of we're really the wrong generation. We're not the generation that's going to decide this. It's
Yep.
like the younger generation they're the ones that are going to let publishers know, basically by voting with their wallet and saying, no, we don't want to do the single issues. We want to do compendiums, or we want comics digitally, or something like that. So it's it always gets really hard to debate in this room with us because we're so used to, like you said, going every Wednesday and getting comics.
Yep. It's interesting because you mentioned people are voting with their wallets, voting with their dollars, and that's really what they're doing now. And it's a shame because I think we're losing out on a lot of good comics that do have potential in the mainstream market because we're canceling them so quickly in the direct market. Marvel and DC are looking at the direct market dollars and saying, all right, well, this book's selling below 10,000 copies. Obviously, it can't support itself anymore. We got to cancel this comic when there is a viable market in the mainstream. And, I mean, I can't speak for DC's perspective, but I guess I could because they've let a lot of Vertigo series continue in the direct format, which they know have carried over and helps the book sales, trade sales have really helped support the monthlies, and Marvel's gotten that recently because a book like Runaways, 4 or 5 years ago would have been killed instantly, but because there's such a huge demand for it as digest, and then that first hardcover did so well. I mean, Marvel's ready to keep Runaways going for a long time, I know, and I think the same is true with the Marvel Adventure books, and with something like we brought up Power Pack earlier, like those Power Pack monthlies don't do very well. If you look at the sales numbers, obviously, it's not enough, maybe even support some of the cost of making the book. I'm not sure. But those books do really, really well in the aftermarket, in the bookstores and in the libraries, and they get very good praises, all the Aegis titles. And they're going to keep going for a long time. And it's just like looking at that secondary market, which I think some publishers are taking a lot more, looking with a keener eye towards, has been very helpful in keeping some of our monthly floppies alive so we can read them,
Is that like the Marvel Mangaverse? Is that what you're talking about also?
Yeah, I would have to say that, the Marvel Mangaverse is something like that. And, the fact that they wanted to bring the Marvel Mangaverse back is as big a shock to me as anyone out there. But when Marvel approached me and said, "Hey, there's demand out there from the bookstores and this, and the retailers for more of this because they've sold out of the trades." Marvel was thinking about putting it in digest size because a lot of the OEL, I hate that term, but the OEL manga, the original English language manga, has been doing really well coming out from Tokyo Pop, that they wanted to revisit it. And, Marvel was willing to make the commitment in the monthlies, and the monthlies are selling okay from what I understand. I mean, only 2 issues are out now, but in supporting itself. But I guess that they're really looking for that aftermarket to really help, boost the sales on it. So,
well, here's a question: if with some of these things like Power Pack or anything else that you've mentioned that does very questionably in the monthly market and the direct market, why do they even do it? Why don't they just release it as a digest immediately and just take 5 issues and boom, make 1 book?
I think it's a matter of cost, to be honest with you. It's just a matter of, again, I can't speak for the business side of this, but I would think, in my opinion, it's kind of like, dispersing the costs over the quarter and making some money back no matter what it is, quicker through the direct market sales to help, float the budget for the artist and the writer, so that they'll have some kind of, return already when they go directly to trade. I mean, shelling out a lot of money for an original full color, what are those? Those are probably 96 pages, 4 issues each. For a 96-page trade, it could be, it is a pretty good amount of cash to lay out in one shot. So, getting some of the money back on a monthly basis, I think, helps out a lot more.
That makes sense. I think I'm a big fan of the digest size, if only for the fact that they're dirt cheap. I really, I'm not a huge fan of the fact that they're smaller, but they're cheaper, so that's how I want it. If they can make it even smaller and make it even cheaper, I'd still buy it because I want to save money, But
I think they've done a great job too, and I mean, this is just Runaways is near and dear to my heart. I love that book more
Me
than
too.
anything.
I'm a huge fan.
And when they first started coming out with digest size, I can pretty much say for the whole creative team that we were a little disappointed with the printing quality, because it printed dark on that. They used that really cheap paper to keep costs down.
Right.
It was a give and take. Okay, the books were really affordable, but they printed poorly, but they sold really well. So once the sales started going up, Marvel really made a push to get it on much better paper, and I think that's something that can really be reflected. If you look at the paper that they're printing digest on now, keeping that cost exactly the same, I think they've made a giant leap in quality. So,
I also think it's an interesting analysis of the up and coming market, in that here's a book that is, while it's perfectly enjoyable for 30, 40, 50-year-olds, its key market is probably a younger audience, and so the fact that the sales of the digests have been amazing, when you look at all the manga that's rolling off the shelves at the mass market booksellers and they're all digest sized, I guess kids, it goes back to what Peter said, the next generation will decide. Well, they are deciding that that is what they are used to buying, and they don't mind buying it, and in fact they probably enjoy buying it.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be interesting, as the next 10 years go by, how many more digest-sized things will be popping up from the big two. Yeah.
No, I agree completely. So.
Can you speculate, maybe, I don't know how much information you know, but DC they recently dropped their manga line because there was some censoring going on there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What was that about? Was that just about not wanting to, did the lawyer step in? Was it a business thing?
I honestly have, no idea. I mean, I've heard rumors just like everybody else, but I'm not one to really, tell tales and talk out of school. So I don't even want to get into it because I don't know what's true and what's not.
That's perfectly fine. I thought maybe.
But yeah, I'm really not sure what happened. I mean, could have been, it could have been lawyers, it could have been editors, it could have been, publishers. Who knows? I mean, I really don't know at this point. So.
Well, how about this? What are your views on some if Marvel had to, or some of the other lines? Why would they want to censor? Why, wouldn't you want to present that material the way it was originally presented, if that's what your line is about?
Me, I would say yes. I would always present everything exactly the way it was presented in Japan. I mean, Japan has pretty hardcore rules in publishing about... All right, well, now I'm getting into a tricky subject. I might eat my words. There's different sets of rules, and how things are perceived. And Japan has serious rules against, more adult content, things like that. However, on the converse side, I mean, they're a little more free with panty shots and boobs and, penises and, things like that. When penises, I mean like little cute kind of Dragon Ball-ish kind of stuff, But,
because really that's what the argument was. It was over just stupid little panty shots.
Yeah, exactly. It was over panty shots. And I don't know if somebody stepped in and said, oh, we can't have this. But in my opinion, if the Japanese have already censored it and put it out to a marketplace that, it was in, I believe Tenjo Tenge was in Afternoon, if I'm not mistaken, or Ultra Jump. I forget. I'm getting confused between two different ones now. But both of those magazines are known to be, sold between boys starting between 16 and 24. Leave it intact and just put the label on it. I don't know if it was a cost issue that they just didn't want to put the label on it and package it in plastic or what's going on. But, Dark Horse has been great about presenting, Lady Snowblood and a lot of those more hardcore titles with, everything intact, but just taking care with the labeling and the presentation of it. So I'm completely against changing anything that's already been published in Japan that way. So
that makes sense. Appreciate your thoughts on that.
No. I just think the concern for me is, and this goes back to, kind of what I was doing at Fanboy, is I like to work directly with the creators. So I know exactly what most of the Japanese creators' thoughts are about working in the States and how they want their work presented in the States and what they feel about the publishing in the States. And every time we get, and it was so hard 10 years ago to convince creators to have their material published in the United States when I was starting out. I have to go over there and beg, but they were saying, no, the American public is going to, or the publishers are going to kind of butcher my work. You're going to want to take it, you're going to want to put it from, reverse it, make it right to left. You're going to want to censor out any kind of gore to suit, your needs over there. And it was a fight to get some of the creators who all have creator ownership. They have to eventually sign off on these deals to let their work be released for publication in English. And they would always let it go for France and Spain and Italy because they knew over there their levels of, decency were the same as the Japanese, but America was always a little bit more pure in their views and wouldn't publish some of the stuff. And we took huge strides over the last, 2 to 3 years in getting most of the creators to release their work and finally say, fine, you can have the okay to publish the stuff because America now is working on the same level as Japan and the rest of Europe. So, yes, I will allow you to, take my work, and they were given permission to have it published in English. Even some of the guys who were hesitant finally let it go. And then something happens like this where, the Tenjo Tenge scandal happens. There was a Negima one over, which Ken Akamatsu was doing. He's the creator of Love Hina. And Del Rey eventually fixed it, which was good, but it broke out in Japan, when Ken Akamatsu went on his board and said, oh, they're going to change my work in English. It's a major setback for a lot of the stuff here because the Japanese creators take that to heart and say, oh, God, here we go. America's going to have another setback. They're going to start censoring my stuff again. And, they might not want to release it. They might not want to give the okay to have future work published here. And I think that's where we get in trouble. So for all the steps we've taken, every kind of misstep with any kind of censoring or something could have ramifications that we don't know about and affect the creators in a different way because they're going to start viewing the American market as taking a step back rather than taking a step forward, which we have been doing. So
that's interesting. That really puts a spotlight on American comics. I mean, I was almost going to say something like when you were talking about producing comics that do have a beginning, middle, and end. You have Preacher, you have Transmetropolitan, you have Sandman, Starman.
Yeah, why the Last Man is going to end at 60, I think.
Right.
61 said so.
And it almost seems like, I'm going to generalize, but it almost seems like, some American creators, maybe there's a little bit of ego too. You want your thing to stick around for as long as it possibly can. Whereas it seems like what you're talking about from the feel anyway, and I'm totally, just surmising. It just seems like some of the Japanese creators, this is what they do, and they want to do it, and they want to put it out there, and they want to give their heart and soul for it, and they want to put it out in almost any format that it can, that it can exist in.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like maybe we would get some artists and creators to take a little bit more of a chance, and say, this is only going to be 70 issues, this is only going to be 50 issues, and that's all you're going to get.
Yeah.
and because this is something that can exist on its own.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to look at it. So
I could see. I mean, that would really change the way we all read comics. Instead of just saying, "Well, I like Daredevil, so I'm just gonna buy Daredevil, and I'll check out the new creative team. Maybe I won't like it, but then in 6 months I'll try Daredevil again." It's like now you have to do some research. You have to say, what are these stories about? Do I think I'm going to like them based on the little description that I'm going to read, or based on what the cover looks like in the store? I mean, because how else would you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess. I mean, is that how Japanese do? I guess that's why they do the anthology thing. They get a smattering, and then they read what they like.
Yeah, they do read what they like. And, Japan's taken an interesting turn, recently, too. Like, we always like to say our sales have been down, or they have been going down. Recently, they've been going up, of course. But, Japanese graphic novel sales have gone up, where the weekly and monthly circulations of magazines like Jump and Afternoon and all of it. What do you want, honey? She doesn't agree with me.
That's all right. We have dogs over here. You got cats. That's
Yep. But those sales have been going down because, fans are able to, just pick up the anthologies and look through it quickly and figure what they like and then go out and buy the graphic novels. I mean, when we talk drop in sales, we're talking drops from like 6 to 8 million to 4 million, which are still far and above, the numbers that we're looking at here in the States. But yeah, they are offered more of a smattering, and they are able to pick, pick and choose what they like a little bit more. And going back to what you were saying is, the non-changing creative team is a point that people always overlook with manga too, because normally when a manga starts and it ends, be it 10 volumes later or 60 volumes later, that same creative team has been on it, the exact same story, or the exact same team straight through, be it the writer artist himself or the writer and the artist. And I think that's something that is another lesson that we could learn from manga, is that consistency in quality is going to help. So, and it's tough because we don't have 5 or 6 assistants working with Brian Hitch or some of the slower artists, unfortunately. So we have to wait for the art. But I think Marvel's learning a little, in DC, the market in general is learning that consistency in keeping teams keeps people happy and keeps sales regular. So
yeah, that's I didn't realize that some of those people had all those assistants and stuff. But I guess if they're selling millions of copies, they can afford to. Yeah,
I mean, you have some guys who do it completely on their own. I know, like a guy like Stomo Nihei. He did Blame. And he did Wolverine Snicked for Marvel. Actually, he does everything by himself: pencil, ink, tone. Refuses to use assistants. And then you got a guy like Eigawa Tatsuya, who did Tokyo University Story and Golden Boy, are 2 of his better-known series here. And neither of the manga has been translated into English, but he uses between 25 to 30 assistants.
Holy mackerel!
But he puts out like 30 pages a week. He does like different stories. He does so many different manga that come out. It's crazy. But they're just like production houses in ways. So he'll do the layouts. Some guys do faces. Some guys do eyes. Some guys do hair. Some guys do trees. Some guys do cars. Some guys do buildings.
Wow.
It really is just production, and makes a lot more money that way. But
yeah. So this week, AI came out. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I don't know where to start. I mean, response. I really like what I wrote in that. It was one of the first things I've written for Marvel since moving from editorial into the freelance world, and it was something different. I mean, I was surprised that Marvel was able to take a chance on the whole I Heart Romance events. I mean, or I Heart Marvel, kind of romance event, and Tom Brevoort and Aubrey Sitterson headed that and really pushed for it. And I think not just the Marvel I issue, but the entire event was great, and I was proud to be a part of it. I think it's something different, and I think that mine having the more manga take on things is a little interesting. I mean, I'm really proud. It's one of the favorite things I've written ever, is that middle story, the Medusa Black Bolt story, and I've been really positive with the response. I've gotten a few emails that have been really great, and people have been really supportive, and the few message boards I go to, I hate to read reviews, but have been pretty positive about it. And I just think that my issue in the event in general has been a pretty good success for Marvel. It's something off the beaten path, and people seem to like it. And a kind of romantic take on the Marvel universe is something you don't see too often. So
it was kind of funny before we called you. We were sitting here talking about it, Kevin and I. We we had both read it, and we both said that we thought the second story with Medusa and Black Bolt was our favorite. And to hear you say that kind of vindicates and validates what we said.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much. I mean, it just, as a new creator, I'm always nervous when something comes out with my name on it and how it's going to be perceived. And I guess everyone's like that with anything when they put themselves out in public in that way, But I mean, I'm proud of all three stories, and I know that all three have a different flavor. And I was hoping when people picked it up, they were going to pick it up and read all three rather than skip around. Say, I just like Division of Scarlet Witch, and I just like Daredevil and Elektra. But I tried to take the characters and do three different takes with three different artists with three different flavors, so to speak. And while the middle one was definitely my favorite, it came out of me the easiest, and I felt that wow, I really nailed it with that one. The other ones were just cute little takes that I really enjoyed as well. But I'm glad you guys, when I look at the issue, I'm proudest of that middle story, and I'm glad that it shows and you guys thought the same. So.
Yeah, I have to be honest. When I first saw the solicitation for the I Heart Marvel, it's the first time I heard about it, and I thought, "What the heck is this?" And and that was my initial reaction. And I thought, "Well, no, I got it." And then I started reading into it and seeing what was going to be produced. And oddly enough, your issue was the one that I was interested in most because I'm a big Daredevil fan, and I saw that you were doing a story with Daredevil, Elektra, and Black Widow and this love triangle thing, and I thought, "That's cool." Now here's an I Heart Marvel book, and it's about these characters who I really enjoyed, and I thought, that's what I want to read, So that's the issue that stood out for me. And then I sat down and read it when it came out last Wednesday, and it does come across that way. That's something I wanted to share, is that each story, even though you wrote each story has a different feel to it. And actually, then that really surprised me, because when I read the middle story, it blew me away. I mean, everything was great, but that story was brilliant, as well as the art is just out of this world too, and everything comes across so wonderfully, and I'm very surprised and very shocked, and I enjoyed it very much. So.
No, thank you. I can't tell you really how much that means to me, because it's just, I'm so pleased a bunch to hear that.
And it is a risk.
Going back to the art on that, I mean, Kei Kobayashi, who did it, I mean, it's his first sequential outing, and I found he was showcased in a Japanese magazine, and I had his website, and through his website I contacted him, and he was really, really nervous. He was like, I don't know if I can do sequentials. He's a video game designer and illustrator by trade, and when I finally convinced him to do it, he didn't know anything about the characters. I mean, he's a big fan of like John Muth and Sienkiewicz, and he knew about American comics, American painters and artists, but he didn't know if he could do it. And then as soon as I was like, the Inhumans, he's like, who? He wanted to do Spider-Man or the X-Men or something, but I just think he did a lot of different character studies and different art, using different styles to really try to capture the characters. And I think what he put down on that final page, which Christina Strain eventually colored, was just beautiful. I mean, I was just blown away when those pages started coming in. So
yeah,
hopefully we'll be seeing more from him. I got another project up and running at Marvel, and he's one of the guys I reached out to originally to do it, and unfortunately for time constraint he can't. And the artist that's doing it is fabulous, but it's just like I definitely want to try to get Kay something else up there at Marvel.
Yeah, I'd love to see him do some other stuff. I mean, it is just brilliant, and to have both of them work together would be interesting to see, and especially what they would do. What characters you would put them on, or what stories would be written. So
yeah, and it's like there's so many. I'm going to get off topic of Marvel Eye for a second, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
There's so many different Japanese creators that want to come here and work on Marvel characters. And it's a fine line for me as a writer, and as I used to be an editor and a talent manager, to do, because everyone's quick to kind of pick on Marvel if you look online, or and you hear some feedback from retail. It's like, oh, Marvel's just trying to ride the wave and get into the manga market. Marvel's just trying to use these manga artists to get sales and to try to appeal to those kids who aren't reading Marvel characters. But that's really not the case. I mean, it's just a lot of every single artist that we've had work at Marvel, Japanese artists so far, be it Kei and Tomoko and Toga from the new issue of Marvel Eye, going back to Kiyasamiya or Stoma Nihei, or these are people who grew up in Japan loving American comics and, getting a hold of them through, international distributors or supermarkets or, maybe their bookstore carried some reprints of, some old Marvel comics back in the day, which were more readily available. I mean, I was just in Tokyo recently and found, Marvel reprints of a lot of beautiful old, like, Buscema and Romita art that came out back in the 70s that were gorgeous. And a lot of these Japanese creators grew up reading that. So when we reach out as Marvel Comics to any kind of creator over there, the thing they naturally want to do is they want to work on Marvel characters because for them it's going to be fulfilling a dream. And, we reach out to them and originally say, oh, we'd love to work on something original with you. We'd love to publish something original. And they'd be like, well, why would we want to do that? We have Kodansha, we have Shueisha, we have our publishers here. We're happy to publish our creator-owned work. We're coming to Marvel. We want to do Marvel characters. And we're always like, well, great. We're not going to turn down some of the bigger Japanese artists in the world, say, no, we don't want you to work on our stuff. We'll say, of course, do what you want to do. Nihei-san, do Snikt. Asamiya-san, please feel free to, we'd love to have you on X-Men if that's what they would like to do. And we accommodate them and accommodate their schedules. And then we've ended up getting shit from both sides, both fans here, because the American manga fans are like, oh, Marvel's hiring those people. Why are they forcing them to do the X-Men? Why are they forcing them to do Spider-Man? Why don't they let them do something original like we're sure that they want to do? And then the superhero fans are like, oh, why are they getting these, why are they forcing these, Japanese artists to do superhero stuff? Let them do their own kind of thing. Why is Marvel, being the bad guy and forcing them to do things they don't want? We can't please anybody, but in the end, we ended up pleasing the manga fan, or the Japanese artist, which is ultimately our goal, hoping they're going to be able to do something new for us in the future and establish that relationship. So it's been always kind of like a no-win situation for us in a lot of cases. So the manga fan is not happy, superhero fan is not happy, but, the artist is happy, the editors are happy, and then, I think there is more of an acceptance for it when now people are realizing, like, wow, Marvel's not trying to cater to that audience. We're just trying to keep the artist happy. And I think when more people realize that, they're able to see more work from their favorite Japanese artists working on Marvel characters and accept it. Then, that's something that we're trying to work harder for. So,
and there are some new, or not new, but there are some American artists who've kind of, taken some hints from the Japanese artists and kind of merged them with their own, and so it's kind of half manga style, half traditional American, superhero style, which is an interesting combination as well.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. I mean, Tokyo Pop is having some some hit and miss success with some of their OEL original manga line, and people always forget going back, 10, 15 years ago, you had guys like, Joe Mad and Humberto Ramos and, a lot of different up-and-comers back in that day who took the style and ran with it and, were very successful. So I think again, my mind's just going all different places. One lesson that I think Marvel and DC have learned in working with Japanese artists is to let them do their thing. Sometimes it's better to just let them taking what I was saying earlier with the story with a beginning, middle, and end, letting the Japanese artists just do their thing. So with Marvel, we made a big mistake putting Kiyasumi on the middle of an X-Men arc with 40 years of continuity behind it. And if you're a manga fan and came in and read it, you wouldn't know what was going on in those stories. But, what Marvel and DC have both done correctly was something like Wolverine Snikt, and with Batman Child of Dreams that Asamiya did for them was they let them, just the writer, tell limited story that came in at the beginning, told the story, and then it ended. It had definitive end. You didn't have to know anything about continuity. You didn't have to know the characters because everybody was introduced from square one. You were able to follow the story, and the story had a definite end. And I think that's the lesson that we learned is how to utilize the Japanese artists. And even if the Japanese artists are working with an American writer like myself or, some other ones that are coming up, telling a story that has a beginning, middle, and end, and introducing everything clearly from start to finish is something that it was the definite lesson that I think came out of the manga experiment over the last 5 years and more the mainstream publishers.
I wonder if it had something to do with because manga is so widely known, and because we've had influxes of creators from other places like the Philippines and Mexico and all the British writers that came over in the 80s and artists that came from Spain and South America, and we accepted them pretty much without any flourish at all. And then I wonder if it was because we were so unfamiliar with their work in those countries that we allowed them to play in our sandbox, so to speak.
That's a good point. That it brings up a lot. Is it the unfamiliarity that helped it gain more acceptance here?
So let me ask you a question for my own personal gain. Is for a guy who hasn't really ever read much manga, but who's been a lifelong superhero reader, is there anything that sticks out that you think I should investigate that I might enjoy?
Do you like? As a superhero fan, do you also tend to like genre stuff like sci-fi?
Yeah, I like sci-fi and fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
for me, the Bible of manga is and always will be Akira. And if you haven't read it, that's the one book I always go to. Akira's great. The newer stuff, like I just read the third volume of, in English, or the third volume of Blam, and it came out from Tokyo Pop. That's by Nihei. It's fantastic. That goes to show you, two very different manga. One, Akira being very manga with the big eyes and kind of speed lines and stuff, and Blam being more influenced by, European art, be it, Mobius or Enki Bilal or something like that. Two very different manga, but both more sci-fi, kind of hardcore in their content, which are fantastic, which I would highly recommend. So.
Okay, cool. I've seen Akira the movie, but I haven't. And I used to have a couple of reprints of the manga. I guess, was it Dark Horse? Did the a regular American comic sized issues?
Yeah, they came out recently. Well, Marvel did it originally
Epic?
in color, and then
Epic.
Dark Horse got the recent rights for black and white later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm sorry, Jamie, but I have a couple of those Epic issues of Marvel. Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really good stuff, and the movie doesn't even compare to the impact that the comic has. Just, you look at some of that stuff, and he drew, the destruction of Tokyo, and he drew every building or every window on every building with the shadow and the light and the reflection, just perfect, and it's just gorgeous to look at. So
that's great. I also when I heard you in the very beginning, you said that you worked on the Record of Lodoss War. I loved that anime, and so I've always been curious about the manga. Does it add to it?
It adds to it, and it tells different stories because there's the Record of Lodoss War, the Grey Witch manga, which came out, and that kind of followed the same characters from the anime series, and it adds upon that and expands a little bit more. There's a second series that came out called Lodoss War. I think it was The Lady of Ferris, I believe, and that is kind of like a side story, which has relatives of the characters and tells different tales, but set in the same land, but in a different time period. Absolutely gorgeously illustrated. Just fantastic. It's by Akihiro Yamada, who's an esteemed illustrator in Japan, and they got him to come in and do some volumes of that. Gorgeous stuff. We were never able to capture some of the fine quality of the artwork, unfortunately, because we weren't provided with film and or digital files back then. And I think for the second volume, CPM might have been. I'm not sure, but that's some fantastic stuff. And if you like the anime series, it's definitely worth picking up.
Cool.
Now, are those out on in graphic novel form from CPM?
Yep, I believe they are. I know the first volume definitely is. I think I put out the first one in graphic novel form back in maybe '99, but I believe they've been updated and put out at digest size. I think they might have even I think the quality for the second volume might have gone up because they might have gotten the digital files from Kadokawa at that point. So
excellent.
What about? Aren't you publishing your own manga book?
I'm trying. There's some stuff that I have coming out. I'm working with a bunch of different creators in a bunch of different countries. I have two things currently going on in Japan with two different publishers that we're trying to get off the ground. One is with Japanese creators, and one is with two American creators I'm working with who we're trying to, we got so many Japanese creators coming over to the States that now, there's kind of the wall that there's really no American creators that are really accepted in Japan. Or I shouldn't say that. They love Jim Lee, they love Mignola, they love Alex Ross, but they're not really known per se by the Japanese community because they haven't been kind of published in any of the weekly or monthly anthologies. So that's the kind of boundary I'm trying to break down now with a few American creators, and we're getting really good response to a bunch of different stuff that we've submitted to them. So it looks like we're going to be hopefully have some stuff published in a few Japanese anthologies coming up over later this year in 2006. And then here, I'm looking at putting out an anthology which was called Jet Lag, which was going to be a bunch of different creators from around the world. I had some European artists lined up, American artists, a lot of Japanese creators who were going to tell original stories, and we're going to put an anthology and put it out here. And it was all lined up. We had a Japanese publisher who was involved to put it out. We had an American publisher who was lined up to help us out. And I kind of was talking about it a little bit on Warren Ellis's The Engine, the message boards, just trying to get some feedback and see what people, thought. And it kind of broke on some anime boards, and then some bigger publishers got word of it, and now it's kind of turned into a bigger beast in the fact that, some bigger publishers have gotten involved, some in kind of contractual negotiations to try to, smooth out some of that stuff. So we're going to get more exposure, better distributions, and hopefully page rates for the artists up front now. So.
Don't you have I thought I saw something of yours is Drained. Is it like a vampire manga?
Yep,
book?
Drained is a vampire manga I'm doing with Sana Takeda, and that's going to be coming out in the fall from Image Comics.
Cool. I saw some stuff online of that, and it looked kind of cool. I'm interested in checking that out.
Yeah, it was originally supposed to be coming out earlier, like May, June-ish, and however, kind of the reality of doing the monthly book kind of set in for Sana, just time-wise and financially. So she's come off now, and she's doing I believe the solicit's hit. So she's doing the first issue of X-Men Fairy Tales, which is a book that I'm doing at Marvel, and she's painting the first issue of that now, just taking a quick break from Drain to get a little money in her pocket and work on some other characters and kind of get her jets recharged to go back into the second half of the Drain miniseries. So.
Cool. Look forward.
What exactly? I mean, can you give us a little synopsis on what the X-Men Fairy Tales is?
Yeah, sure. I'd actually like to talk about this because I haven't been able to talk about it anywhere else.
Go ahead.
There you go.
X-Men Fairy Tales is a miniseries. It's going to be 4 issues. And back in the day, I was a huge fan of X-Men 153, which was Chris Claremont did Kitty's Fairy Tales, which was he took, Kitty, I believe it was Colossus actually reading a bedtime story where he did an X-Men adventure set as kind of a fairy tale, as kind of a pirate adventure, and took the X-Men characters and set them in kind of different stereotypes from different characters from different fairy tales. And I always loved that. And Marvel followed up on it years later, doing another one with Kitty as a space pirate. I think it was X-Men Annual 8, actually. But I always loved the fact that you could take these X-Men stories, and they're kind of allegories themselves for different genres of different kinds of fairy tales from around the world. So I pitched this idea to Marvel where we take different international fairy tales and kind of take the basis of them and tell X-Men stories with them. So they liked it, pitched it, did exactly the stories I wanted to do, and they approved it. So the first issue is a retelling of a classic Japanese folktale called Momotaro the Peach Boy, and it retells the origin of the initial X-Men, the original 5. And then we go from there to different genres. The second issue is an African folktale. It's based on the story of the friendship of the tortoise and the eagle, which we examine the friendship between Xavier and Magneto over the years. And then the third one is based on the Grimm's fairy tales, kind of like it's the Dark Phoenix saga, kind of told through like a Sleeping Beauty kind of fairy tale. And it's actually pretty cool. And then the fourth one is Peter and the Wolf, kind of a Colossus and Wolverine kind of story with a very heavy Russian kind of feel to it.
That's perfect.
And the artists we've selected for each of them we went with Sana for the Japanese painterly feel for the first one, and I can't say who was drawn the second and third ones, but when Marvel told me who was doing them, I was just absolutely blown away. Like, I'm working with 2 high-level Eisner Award-winning artists on this stuff, and it was just like
fantastic.
That's cool.
Wow, and both their styles fit so perfectly with the scripts that I turned in that was just blown away. So I just didn't want a lot of people have been asking, what's all the X-Men fairy tales going to be Japanese? And I was like, no. There's going to be different things for everybody in each of these. And I'm really happy with the way they turned out. So
Cool.
Sounds interesting. When's that supposed to possibly hit?
first issue's April.
Cool.
And in the previews that comes out either this week or next week, I believe there's going to be the solicitation and then a 2-page preview.
Are you going to be at the New York Con?
Yep, with bells on.
Fantastic.
You guys going to be going? Or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, awesome.
Are you just going to be milling around? Do you have a booth or anything?
Yeah,
or?
I'll be milling around and hanging out. So
Cool.
I'll be at most of the Marvel panels, just hanging out, listening to what they have to say, and most of the DC panels too. I mean, I'm a big panel guy now that I don't have to be on them, so I like to hear what people have to say. So.
You used to do portfolio reviews at cons, didn't you?
Yeah, I used to do portfolio reviews, and that's as much as I love it, and I hired a lot of different artists based on portfolio reviews and people I found at cons. It really is draining because it's in a lot of ways when you look at it, you hold somebody's hopes and dreams in your hands. You don't want to say anything negative, but you want to be honest with the person, and it's just that kind of unease at first. And it's a barrier you have to cross between being honest with a person and helping them put them on the right path of their career, not just blowing smoke up their ass and telling them what they wanted to hear, like, oh, you're so good, keep at it, So, but portfolio reviews get so draining for me. It's just like something that I've done enough over the years. Right? If I never do another one, I really don't mind.
Pat yourself on the back a little bit. Is there an particular artist that you discovered through one of those?
The artist that I still am proudest of having discovered at that point is Adrian Alfona, who's doing Runaways.
Yeah.
Hadn't done anything before. I mean, I love Adrian to death. He's still a really good friend, and he's still on Runaways. And
I hope he stays on that for as long as it goes.
I think going back to that consistency in titles, I think that's one of the reasons that I'm proudest of Runaways as well. Is that with the last issue that just came out, I think we had 2 Takeshi fill-ins in the first arc and 2 Takeshi fill-ins in the second arc, and so Adrian has now done I forget what it was. We figured he's drawn 30 issues, straight through on a series that's with the first 18 and now with 1432, he's a little bit ahead. That it's just amazing that an artist can go through and do that much, and he's so underrated. He doesn't get enough recognition, if you ask me. So.
Well, it's just a great book.
That new issue that came out, 13, with the Molly story, was just awesome. And the way he handled those characters. It's like there's that panel on like page 3 or 4 where Molly just turns to the kids and she grabs her hat away. And just the look on her face and the motion when she does it, it's just priceless,
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
With all your knowledge, I'm going to just be a little self-indulgent here. With all your knowledge of the industry and digests and trades, can you get hired at DC and get their asses and get them to do a new Teen Titans trade run, please? The Wolfman Perez stuff.
I would love to get them to do that. The one format that DC is putting out that I love is the kind of the absolute editions where it's oversized. I mean, as much as I love the digest, but having those absolute editions with all the extras and presenting that big format is just so nice.
Yeah, well, most of those are most of those are on my shelf. Not all of them, but yeah, they're great. And some of that stuff, you just, God, it just takes you all back, especially when you see it that big. Because as a kid, you read your comics, and now as an adult they look kind of smaller. So now you got the absolute. You stick them on your bed, and it's like going back to a kid again.
Yep. Oh, totally.
Great. Well, I think we've asked all the questions we have. Kevin, any last?
Well, I just wanted. I know you have the upcoming Spider-Man Unlimited number 14 coming up. I think it's next month, right?
Yep, and another one of my. I got lucky and got Mr. Finch to do it. So.
Oh, cool. Wow!
Nice.
That's a nice Spider-Man, Black Cat, and Doctor Doom story that you got.
Yeah, no, it was just, I've every now and then, I get lucky, and I feel like I broke my ass, a lot for in this industry over the years, and it's just every now and then something comes together where you're like, wow, all my hard work paid off, and when Andy Schmidt called me, and it was Tom Brevoort at that point because he was in the book, and when him and Brevoort and Schmidt called me, it was like, we think you can get, David Finch for this issue. I was just like, wow, it all paid off. Those last, all the work I put into it. When something like that happens, just like great, that's kind of the guy who's going to make something shine for me. And it's one of there's a lot of creators I really would love to work with in this industry. And when they told me I was working with Finch, I was like, oh, that's awesome. So,
I mean, there's plenty to say. I mean, from the creators I've talked to, and also creators and that have posted on the internet in different situations and such. Everybody that speaks of you very highly.
And I appreciate that.
I mean, and I remember the article on I think it was Newsarama when you were resigning as an editor at Marvel full time, and it was neat to see that all these people you had worked with made special drawings as presents, like going away gifts and things like that. And I thought that was just beautiful, and that just speaks volumes for yourself and what you've done. And
yeah, they blew me away with that. When Marvel and Mackenzie Cadenhead, who kind of spearheaded that whole thing to get the people to contribute to it, I was a complete surprise for me. Because when they presented me with that book, I was just like, oh my God, I couldn't believe what some of the stuff that was in there, the people they got to actually draw, kind of pictures, and I'm sure there were a few missed deadlines. Some of the guys who were in there were pretty top quality, and it was just such a treat for me.
Well, it speaks volumes, and all. Do you still do the talent managing partially and editing, or
no editing? No, not at all. And most of my time is just spent writing these days. But Marvel knows that they can call me up and say, hey, we got a problem here, and could you help out with so and so who's behind, or hey, I know you're good friends with Steve McNiven. I know you're good friends with Adrian. Can you see what they want to do next, or what they're up to? And conversely, I have a lot of people who, just because they don't know who else to turn to, I'm become friends with some of these guys over the years, that they naturally call me and say, hey, would you mind giving so-and-so a call and figuring out this? Or, would you call my inker and, kind of smooth this over? So I do find myself in the middle of a lot of this, and people still say, oh, I'm the talent liaison. Like Paul Jenkins just referred to me that recently in an interview, when I'm really not. I'm just, I'm a writer now, I'm a freelancer, and I'm helping out. But, just because of where I am and the people I know, I'm able to kind of just still kind of set things up and make, recommendations and stuff like that. So I help out where I can, and it's all about the love of what I do, and just the love of the books, the love of the people that I work with, and just the love of comics in general. So
that Peter just said, it sounds like us.
Yeah. So is there anything else coming out, or anything else you want to make our listeners aware of, that beyond the X-Men fairy tales and the Spider-Man Unlimited and your
I've got the
book
coming up from Image's Fall, which is Drain. It's a book called Shiki, which is one of the things I'm most excited about. It's with a Portuguese creator, João Lemos, and if you go up to my blog, you can every now and then I'm going to be posting some artwork from it. I haven't posted in a bit. I've got to go up there, but it's kind of a fantasy book, which I'm really happy with, and he's doing an amazing job on, I think. And then one of the things that never really gets talked about, I don't know if anyone's really talked about it yet. I've got an anthology series that's going to be launching in the fall, also from Image, called Twins. And basically, what it is every issue is about a different series of female twins and a different situation they find themselves in. Like the first one is two sisters who get involved in a romantic love triangle, kind of like, a boy falls in love with one of them, and one sister gets very jealous, like, we look the same, why would you fall in love with one without the other? The second one is just about two female assassins, who one is always able to provide the alibi for the other because they look exactly alike, so people that hire them think there's only one, but there's actually two. The third one's about a series of space pirates who are twin sisters who are kind of rivals. One's the good pirate, one's the bad kind of pirate, and kind of a big sci-fi adventure. So it's just taking all different genres and putting these two different female twins in it and seeing how they react in different situations. So, and it's going to be rotating artists on each issue and rotating cover artists. So, there's going to be some really nice stuff in this, I think. So I'm really happy with the way it's turning out so far.
Cool.
Keep us up to date.
Oh, I'll let you know. And then I've got, an autobiographical kind of project I'm working on, which is very near and dear to my heart, but I don't know when it'll come out and where it'll come out. But, I go to all these bars and all these parties and tell these stories about stuff that I went on in high school, and people are always like, oh, you should write a story about that. Or, I tell stories about, crazy shit that went down when I was in Japan with, different stuff. And people are like, wow, I'd love to read that. So I've actually started writing those stories down and gotten a few friends who have some time to kind of, illustrate them up. But it's coming out nice. I don't know when and where that'll come out, but we'll see. That's another one where my mother will kill me. Me and a bunch of my buddies, we were out one time, which happened to be hanging out with our mothers for some reason, and they're like, we really want to know what went down, like, on this night. And remember that time you lied to us and you told us that, you were going to the basketball game and you ended up not coming home that night because it was a snowstorm? What happened? Where were you? And we're just like, you really don't want to know. And this is one of those books where, it's like, I'll put it out there. I'm going to put myself out there, like, 100% honest, like, here's what happened. And I could just see people being like, oh, my God, I didn't want to know that. Kind of the names have been changed to protect the innocent. Too, so.
There you go.
But, yeah, I'm really excited about a lot of different stuff that I'm going on. I do have 2 other things cooking at Marvel that I can't talk about yet for under penalty of death. But I'm really happy. I always take the slow and steady wins the race kind of attitude. I'm starting small, doing it exactly like I think I should be doing it. Just start with the unlimited stories and start with a few small miniseries. And I respect the fact that Marvel's treating me exactly like they would any other freelancer, and I'm want to get my independent projects out there just as much as I do my mainstream projects. So, we'll see where I am a year from now.
Well, we wish you the best of luck in all your endeavors.
No, I really appreciate that. And, you guys, I thank you for taking the time out of your day and your lives to really chat with me, So, if there's anything ever I can do for you gentlemen, please feel free. You got my email. You got my contact information. You got my phone number, obviously. So feel free to use it. If there's anything I can do, I'd be more than happy to.
It was totally our pleasure. It was
Yes.
a joy sitting here listening to you. And we'll definitely come up and say hi when we're up in New York.
Yeah, we'll look for you in New York. I mean, I've heard some drinking stories about you, so...
Yeah. I can't say it out loud because I know this will be broadcast over the Internet, and who knows how many people are listening, but if you come and see me on Friday at the show, definitely hook up because I will be able to give you something that will tell you when and where we will be drinking.
Okay. Well, we'll actually... Because one of us will probably always be at Mike Norton's table.
Oh, well, Mike Norton is actually coming to this event.
Oh, well, then that's perfect.
He will be able to tell you the when and the where.
Okay,
cool.
great.
And maybe, hopefully, he'll be able to introduce us.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Excellent.
Okay, well, enjoy the rest of your evening, and once again, we thank you so much for joining us.
Guys, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and you guys have a great night.
All right, you too.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Very cool.
Another nice guy.
Yeah, he's...
Yep.
Aces.
What's neat about that too is we got into the whole manga thing, which I didn't expect that we would even go into all that, and I know we have a lot of manga listeners, and they're always asking us to get into that kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool that maybe that sheds some light on some things. Maybe they have questions about distribution and the artist coming over drawing the stuff. So that's kind of cool that we got into
he
that.
Has it's such a diverse background that he has. I mean, and it's just when I was researching more and more about him, and it's just like he did this, he did that, he did this, and it's like wow,
Well, as soon as I heard he was an editor for CPM, or not an editor, but he worked getting them off the ground, it was like I knew he knew his stuff because I remember, I'm not a big manga fan in any way, shape, or form, but I know the stuff that came out of that company was good stuff, and I picked up a few of like the Record of Lotus War stuff, and so I knew it was a quality guy if that was a company that he helped, cultivate.
What a job though to be the talent manager, to be the in-betweener between all these guys.
I kept thinking of he's like the concierge of Marvel.
Referee.
But you can see,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I think, the referee.
Yeah,
I mean, because you can see how his demeanor and his type of person he is, and like I said, with reflections of other creators that have worked with him, I have nothing but accolades to say about him, and he'd be the perfect guy to mediate a situation and kind of smooth things over and keep everybody happy.
Put his arm around you, hey buddy, what's the matter?
Yeah.
Why don't you get in this
Artists are temperamental.
Everybody.
They're crazy.
I hope he's tall, just in case.
He's got some sumo wrestling friends who back him
There
up.
you go.
That's right, Yakuza. Connections there in Japan.
This one, Peter, is from Martin Galloway. Question number 1. Who was the janitor who had amnesia in Stars and Stripe?
It was another Golden Age character, and I can't think of. Who would have been around? Crap. Shucks.
He was a bad guy, I thought.
Per Degaton. I don't know who it is.
Sir Justin.
Oh, this wasn't a bad guy.
It's Shining Knight.
Question number 2. Who killed Booster Gold's sister?
Oh, they were the old. They were aliens from Dimension X.
That is
were
correct.
These old Teen Titans villains or characters or whatever.
Name the original members of DP7. Real name or code name?
Is that truly a Marvel question?
It is now.
Who's that big guy? Mastodon or something like that? Or something like that.
That's
Yes,
correct.
I think you're
That's
right on that
correct.
God bless you, man.
That's the only one I know.
That's the only one I there's an energy one, and I couldn't even tell you.
There's a Crusader in there.
I was gonna say I thought there was.
I always get. Twilight.
Yeah.
Oh.
We got Antibody, Mastodon, Blur, Friction, Dennis Skuz Kaczynski, Glitter, and Twilight.
Okay. So I had DP1. No, DP2.
Look out, don't step into DP2.
Oh wow.
Thanks for playing.
Yeah.
And you too can send in your Stump the Reels questions. One DC, one Marvel, one independent or other. Send it in with the answers. Your chance to win a small prize.
Yeah, we never know what that prize is going to be, but
It's always something different.
Something
It's fine.
decent.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Although we got a big stack of trades over there that one of our listeners generously donated, so we could always pull something from there.
So there's always something.
That's funny that Mike Norton is one of the guys that he's
Yeah.
in it. That's great.
Well,
How
I was
convenient.
Like Maury, Chris Sotomayor, and all these guys. Dave Finch. I mean, I was on CB's blog, which he just posted recently because he was kind of lackluster with posting on it, and he posted this picture about a month ago, and I think it was probably when Finch was at the Big Apple Con
Okay.
for that one day, and there's this picture of him and Finch like arm in arm, each holding drinks, and you can tell they're drunk off their ass. Funny.
What is his blog?
I'll have to. I don't know.
You don't
offhand.
remember the
I don't
address?
have. We can post it on the
We'll
thing.
put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. But I have all. It's on. I listed it on our forum. It's on there.
Oh, it's on there? Okay.
It's on
So
our.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll pull it on.
So you can pull that up and put that in there then.
And for anybody who doesn't know what we mean when we say show notes, if you go to the episode link on our site, because this has come up a couple times on the forum, but if you don't go to the forum, you won't know this. Go to the episode. There is a search function. So if you want to know if we've talked about or talked to a certain creator, artist, whatever, a certain discussion about, I don't know, anything, trades, the collapse of the 90s, top 5 artists, writers, characters, blah, 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 blah. Just do a search, and the majority of the episodes have show notes, and it's all there, and you can check it out.
Did you want to do that thing? Pete?
Sure. Let's do February dates, because February's almost done, and we haven't done it in a while. February 17th, 1920, Kurt Swan was born. February 9th, 1928, Frank Frazetta was born. Cover date of February of 1935, New Fun, The Big Comics Magazine #1, is the first comic book in what will eventually become DC Comics line. Matt Groening was born February 15th, 1954.
Creator of The Simpsons.
Creator of The Simpsons, yep. Cover date February 1966, Teen Titans #1. Cover date February 1974, this is for Kevin. Amazing Spider-Man 129 is the first appearance of
The Punisher.
the Punisher,
Yeah,
yep.
I knew that one.
And the concept of the anti-hero. How about this? Cover date February 1979, Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man #27.
First Frank Miller on Daredevil.
First time Frank Miller draws Daredevil. We have Batman 368, cover date February 1984. It's the first appearance of Jason Todd as the new Robin. That's pre-crisis continuity. That same cover date, Saga of the Swamp Thing 21. The Anatomy Lesson by Alan Moore changes everything in the Swamp Thing universe. Booster Gold number 1, cover date February 86, is arguably the first post-crisis new character in the DC universe created by Dan Jurgens. Cover date February of 86, Daredevil 227.
227?
Mm-hmm.
That's Born Again, first issue of
First issue of Born Again. Let's see what else.
Definitely first issue of Born Again.
Yeah, definitely.
Cover date February of 87, Wonder Woman number 1, George Perez along with company reinvents the Amazing Amazon. The Death of the Incredible Hulk TV movie aired on February 18th, 1990.
Wow.
That's the one where I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. How he dies.
Well, he died.
It was so simple the way he died. It was like, what?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
And it had like the that
dead.
female character who was like the Black Widow. She was modeled
Oh,
after
really?
the Black Widow, yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah. She was like the spy, then tied into the Russian. It was a whole backstory there, and she, they fell in love, and it was kind of a cool story. It was a neat ending to the to the whole run of movies and the TV show. It was a good story, but I can't believe that was 16 years ago.
Yeah. February 6, 1994, Jack Kirby died of a heart failure at the age of 76 in his home in Thousand Oaks, California. February 20th, 1996, the Generation X made-for-TV movie aired on Fox. Let's see. Vince Sullivan, DC's first editor, died at the age of 88 from cancer, February 3rd, 1999. February 13th, 2000, Charles Schultz, creator of the Peanuts cartoon strip, died at the age of 77. It's a little depressing here. February 18th, 2000, Stephen Hughes, co-founder for Chaos Comics, he died at the age of 48. Jeanette Kahn steps down as president and editor-in-chief February 6, 2002. From her 26-year-long post, Paul Levitz would take over. Chuck Jones died February 22nd, 2002. February 14th, 2003, Daredevil, the movie, opened. Christopher Reeve was on the TV show Smallville February 25th, 2003. There goes my contact.
And he's dead too. What the hell is this with
I know, it sounds like if
February?
you can make it past February, the rest of the year's a breeze.
Yikes. February 20th, 2004, Jim Valentino is no longer the publisher of Image, and Eric Larson took over. And February, Julius Schwartz passed away February 8th, 2004. That is a lot of
Deaths.
Yeah, in February. Either
Damn, if
Either
you're,
I
if you're a
just-
commc creator and
Yeah,
you live through February, you're all right for the rest of the year.
Is there anything uplifting? Hold on, I got to find something uplifting on this.
We decided to start the podcast in February,
February
of
2005.
There you go. Good save.
On a good note. Now let's do some voicemails.
Well, you had CB's blog pulled up. Was it chesterfest.blogspot.com? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Chesterfest?
Chesterfest.
Okay.
Yeah, chesterfest.blogspot.com.
Yeah.
All right, voicemail.
Hello, CGS crew. My name is Dale. I hail all the way from Grand Forks, North Dakota. I've been listening to your show for a few months now, and I enjoyed your episode where you did that big retrospective on Valiant not too long ago. And I remember you brought up Malibu Comics, and I just want to say that brought back so many memories. Malibu Comics is one of my all-time favorite comic groups. For the few years they were around, I loved Prime, the Ultra Force, Ruin, Darkman, most importantly, Hardcase. I cannot tell you how ticked off I was when Marvel bought them out and frickin' canceled. They supposedly relaunched it and said they were going to make them bigger and better than ever. They meant lowering all their comics to $1.50 each and make them cheap, seem like the cheap knockoff brand that they were nowhere were a year ago. And they ended up canceling all their issues, all the new series they reintroduced within a year and a half anyways, and the stories were nowhere near as good. And, I was so ticked off. But Malibu, they had lots of great memories, and I'd really love to hear what your guys' perspective is on Malibu Comics, if you had any favorites and what they were. So please do a retrospective on them soon. And, yeah, thanks. Keep up the great work, guys.
Yeah, from your lips to Peter's ears about the spotlight, but I agree. I know Kevin was going to say something too. I loved the Malibu stuff, especially Prime. That was my favorite.
Yeah, I read a bunch of those too.
Prime was Breyfogle, right?
Yeah, Norm Breyfogle.
So that's the one was my favorite too.
I liked Solitaire and Strangers.
And the Barry Windsor Smith one.
Yeah,
the
Rune.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was cool. I remember going to the Philly show in '93 when that was coming out, the Malibu line, and they had their booth set up, and everybody was there. Perez, all them guys, and they all sat in a big L, almost a U, and they had a section of the program where you could go up, and they had each section for each one of their creators, and you could meet each one as like a line as you went down through, and they would sign your book. You got to talk to them and got to see what they were bringing out and what they were doing and stuff, and they handled it really well. And I enjoyed a lot of the series, the titles that came out in that. And when they did the crossover with Marvel and they started throwing the characters together, it kind of like I kind of enjoyed it on its own.
Yeah.
And it held there, and then you can see, of course, it didn't survive. They didn't put the energy into it, and it didn't hold up. But
Well, how about when we come back from New York, we'll put that on the next Spotlight. I don't know exactly what episode, but
Right.
we'll make that our next Spotlight.
that's cool.
Cool.
All right. Got another voicemail here.
Hey guys, this is Tony from Tip City, Ohio. Calling you because I am driving home tonight after getting Stanley's autograph.
Oh, wow.
Stan spoke tonight at Clark State College in Springfield. All too brief. It wasn't even an hour. But then he went across the street to the Clark County Public Library and did a signing. And you have to get a ticket in order to wait in line to get his autograph. Limit 2 items per person, and believe me, most people brought 2 items. They told me they had 700 tickets, and they thoroughly expected all of them to be handed out. He started signing a little after 8 o'clock, and he didn't get to me till 11:30.
Jesus.
So I don't know, and there had to have been 150, 200 people behind me at least. So he was going to be there for a while. He was joking about how tired he was, and I'm sure he was. But man, he was great. It was great talking to him, even for just a minute. A couple things that stood out when he was talking earlier in the evening at the auditorium. He said he was proud of how Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos represented different races, different countries. And then he said, and then there was the English guy who acted kind of gay, but I'm still not quite sure about him. So that was funny. And I took my 8-year-old son. He had a great time. Hearing the guy who co-created Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four and the X-Men and every other comic book. And my wife went and was pleasantly surprised by how great a speaker he was. But then, of course, we already knew that from listening to his interview on Comic Geek Speak. And I wanted to thank the members of the forum, because I wouldn't have even known about this if it hadn't been for a thread that said something to the effect of, live in Ohio, want to see Stan Lee, and there it was. So thanks, guys. And by the way, it cost me $50 because I've been listening to catching up on the old podcast. My old MP3 couldn't handle too many podcasts at a time, so I had to spend $50 on a memory card. So thanks a lot, and keep it up, and take it easy.
Comic Geek Speak, making dreams come true.
Spreading the love.
I was going to say bankrupting listeners one
listener at a time. Wow, I mean, think about that. What would you? I mean, you met Stan Lee. What would you take to him to sign? I mean, what would you take? I mean, that's.
I don't know if I even have any comics that he wrote.
Oh, really?
Oh, I have some of those. I had the one time I did actually get to meet him. The guy, like 2 guys in front of me, had a copy of Avengers #1.
Wow.
And like Stan looked at him and was like, "You really want me to sign this?"
Yeah, I know. See, that's where I was going to say.
And the guy's like, "Yes, I want you to sign it." So, boom, Stan Lee, and that was it. I'd take, probably like an Essentials or some kind of some kind of trade. I don't know if I'd take an actual comic.
Well, that's what's it. I was, my first thought was like, wow, I think I'd probably take Amazing #1 or something, But then I'm like, no, I don't want him to sign. I don't want, defacing, and even though it is adding to it, it's still something that I don't think I could hack him, watch him do it.
Yeah.
In a way, it's enthusiastic, but it's like bittersweet in its own way. But
I would take Stripperella #1.
yeah. I actually have 2 things signed by him. I met a guy that used to sell all different kinds of comic-related stuff and things, and he knew Stan very well. I used to talk to him on the phone, and he would sit there and we'd talk for hours about stuff with Stan and him and all this. And Stan would just get stuff, like pull stuff out of his closet, and wow, here are these things, and then he'd give them to him to sell, and he'd be like, well, if you sign them, I'll sell them. And I have two color guides to 2 Spider-Man books that are just, the mock-up art with the hand-colored stuff.
Right.
And he had all these, and he autographed all of them, and this guy was selling them for him. So I have 2 autographed things from Stan, but I didn't get to it personally. But
You know what? A question we got. You guys weren't here for one of the episodes, and we talk about it real quick. What's the most you spent on a back issue? That you're willing to say, to fess up to.
He's not married, so he can spill the beans.
Well, we might laugh at him though.
I mean, I did spend $4,000 for an Amazing Fantasy 15 and a Amazing Spider-Man #1
Together.
It was both of them for $4,000. But I ended up returning them to the guy because I bought them off eBay, and the guy was cool. The pictures looked cool. I mean, they were in, you're never going to find near mint conditions of those books. So they were like in, very good condition, and I looked at the scans, and he had high quality scans and stuff. But when I received them, I opened them up and looked at them, and it was like, my heart didn't go like, ah. I saw things that I couldn't see on the pictures, and I was like, And I thought to myself, well, it's eBay, and this was, back in eBay was in its infancy, only a year or 2 old. And
It's just eBaby.
yeah, exactly. And
I've had 2 Mountain Dew. I'm like the Matt now.
I didn't, you didn't know what, I didn't expect to, be able to do something, but I just contacted him and said, look, these aren't what I expected I was getting, and it wasn't a cut against him. It was just like, I should have, when I opened the package and had those books sitting in my hand, I should have had a certain feeling, and I didn't get that. And to me, I was like, well, then this isn't what I really want. So I didn't keep them, but I ended up sending them back and got my money back. He was very cool about it. I mean, he didn't have to. At those times, like I said, you bought it, that was it. So he gave that to me. But that would have been my highest one. Of course, then I took that money and went to buy a better copy of Amazing Fantasy 15 that I lost an auction on, which my highest bid was like $3,200. And the guy emailed me after I sent these books back, and he said to me, hey, this guy didn't come through with the winning bid. I'll offer it to you for what you bid it for. And I was like, oh, cool. So I said, well, I have $2,000, but I'm getting $2,000 back from this guy once he receives my book. So I said, I can. And he said, well, I'll give you some now. If you send me $2,000, I'll send you the book. And then you like it, you send me the additional $1,200. If you don't, then send it back, and I'll refund your money.
I know this story.
And I did. I sent him a cashier's check from a bank, and he fucking split on me. So I lost $2,000.
Didn't you have to? Didn't you actually report that to the FBI or something?
I reported it to the local police, who told me that he said I can't give you real details because there is somebody in the area under investigation by the FBI, because apparently I'm not the only one that got screwed. And so then they told me I had to contact the FBI. So then I called the FBI out west, because this was in Oregon. The guy was in Oregon. And then they gave me a runaround and told me I had to report the crime where I lived. So I had to call my local branch of the FBI. So I called the Philly branch of the FBI, and he's like, no, you got to report where the crime actually occurred. So I went back and forth, and and it went on, and I never could get any straight answers and never get any straight results. And finally I contacted somebody from Philly in the FBI and talked to them extensively about it, and they started researching it, and they just said, well, we can't prove that it was part of this bigger plot, because they said for $2,000, it's not, we have so much stuff to get involved with it that it's not big enough amount for us to really go after. However, if it was part of a bigger case, that if he ripped off, a bunch of people for 20, 25 grand, then it would be something that they would definitely pop into. So I got kind of caught in the middle, and nobody would do squat, and so I'm out $2,000. I just lost $2,000.
Sorry, I brought it up.
You should have kept those other 2 books for the $4,000.
Well, that's just it. See, and I would have, kept those books, and look what they would have been,
Right.
worth now.
Right.
Because that was before the Spider-Man movies came out or anything like that. So that would have been my highest endeavor as far as price-wise. But I'd have to say, outside of that, the most I spent was, I think, $500 for an Amazing Spider-Man number 13 with Mysterio.
That doesn't sound bad, though.
No, well, again, I bought that 15 years ago.
Right.
So, I mean, I bought a lot of my Amazing Spider-Mans. I used to go up to Kutztown and at a comic shop called Cap's Comics Cavalcade, and he had more back issues than Lem did at the time. So I used to take like a week, a month, and take like $80 and go up there and buy back issues. And at that time, from like Amazing Spider-Man from like 40 up to the present, at that time, you could buy issues for $2-4 a piece. So I used to walk out of there with 40 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, all like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, all that stuff. And so that's how I accumulated a lot of my stuff. And then I bought stuff at shows, and then finally I needed number 1, 2, and like a 13 and something else. And from one guy I bought 3 issues, like 2, 13, and another issue. And I think my total bill was like almost $1,000, like $900. And again, at that time, that was cheap for those books at that time. But I think that's the most. On a single issue, I have to say probably about $500 is the most I think I've ever spent. You laugh?
I sound like a piker because like $20.
Yeah, that's what, I think my total was 20.
Is
was
about
mine,
as much because I can remember wanting Marvel Secret Wars number 1, and that was I came into Marvel Secret Wars, I think it was about 4 or 5, and I wanted to get them, and like number 1 was the hottest one. I think it was like $20. I saw it at a show.
Really?
And
Wow.
and grabbed it for like $20.
Wow.
And so, I mean, the most I think I've ever spent at one time, a guy brought in a collection to Lem that Lem just didn't want. There were books that he just didn't want, but it was a huge chunk of Avengers that he brought in, plus then some Byrne X-Men were in there too that I didn't have. And I said to Lem, Lem passed on, I said, would you mind if I offered him something for this? Lem's like, no problem, as long as, he didn't care as long as he got first right of refusal for it. So I think I offered him like $250. And the guy really needed the money, and it was at least 100, 150 issues. And the guy's like, yeah, I'll take it. So that's probably the most I spent at one time. That was because I just got my income tax check back. And
easy come, easy go.
yeah. And that's why but it really
What an opportunity, though.
It filled in a whole bunch of like Avengers issues that I didn't have. And they were all in pretty good shape. And actually the funny thing is he had bought a lot of them from Lem. So he was like bringing them back, and so it was just like the whole circle of life.
I mean, that happened too. I mean, that's how I completed my Daredevil run, was from Lem when he did that with. He bought a small collection from a guy, and this guy happened to have a full run of Daredevils, and I needed, I guess, issues 1 and 2, and 12 to 55 to complete my run of Daredevil. And Lem bought the collection, told me about it, and pulled out all those issues for me and sold them to me for a lump sum of $250, which at the time when that occurred, Daredevil number 1 was worth $120 alone. Mm-hmm. So I mean, for that, that's why I said, I mean, he used to give out deals like that when you bought a lump sum like that, and he told me $250. I think I paid it in like 3 payments, and then he gave me the whole stack of books, and done deal.
I'd be willing to bet that he made all of everything back, plus a profit on that $250 that he sold. And
I'm sure.
And he knew he could sell it to you right away, so he turned it right all over, and all the rest was gravy.
Right.
Yep. All right.
Very
well,
interesting.
We better.
I thought it was very interesting. That's a good question.
Hang on, I just realized that I need to pull something up.
We talked about that in a previous episode, so that's why I thought maybe
That's
you guys
cool.
would
Yeah, that's cool.
spit that out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm almost ready.
I for
Almost
one,
ready.
always find I'll buy just about any condition book just so that I can read it. I'm
Yeah.
of the mind that I want to read these. Yeah, there are some like the Avengers that I want to get good copies of everything, but when you say spend a whole lot on one issue, I'd rather go and find a half cover issue of JLA #1 than Justice League of America #1 from the '60s. Than spend $500 on maybe a good copy of it. That's just the way I look at it.
Well, and that's what happened with me. I mean, I was doing that, and I was very fortunate that I decided to start completing runs when I did, when things weren't as expensive. I mean, I bought my first issue #1 of Iron Man for $20 out at the one Pittsburgh store, and it was like near mint condition. And like now, I could turn around. I think that's probably like $600, $700, $800 or whatever. But I was very fortunate that way. And what you had said, as buying issues and buying a cheaper version and such, I think, from my experience, what happened with me with eBay when I experienced that, losing that $2,000, and then saw things starting to escalate a little bit, because my next reaction, I had, full run of Caps, full run of Iron Mans, full run of Daredevil, full run of, Almost Amazing, and I thought, well, my next evolution would be to buy a full run of Tales of Suspense, because that leads up to both Captain America and Iron Man having their own books. And I started to buy some of those issues, and I just after I lost that $2,000, and then started seeing how long it would take me to get those issues and what it would cost me, and knowing that I wouldn't be able to get them all right away, and then by the time I would get them, what would be the early ones, how much would they go up, and I decided, that's it. I don't need to spend a lot of money on these back issue stuff anymore, and that's where I stopped buying a lot of back issues. It was at that time, and I just figured, I could put that money towards something else. I could buy new books. I could buy other stuff that I enjoy, and not feel kind of conscientious about, like you said, selling out $500 for one book, and looking at it and going like, well, I'll put this in a box, and there it is. Yeah, I own it.
Exactly right. All right, this episode of Comic Geek Speak was sponsored by pixelstrips.com. They have now over 20 comics, and they're still growing. So if you're into webcomics, check out pixelstrips.com. And if you would like to send us an email, it's comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. And our website is comicgeekspeak.com. And a big thanks to CB Cebulski for joining us today. Thanks to the guys at upallnightgaming.com for hosting the website. Please vote for us at Podcast Alley. And a reminder that this episode was brought to you in conjunction with worldfamouscomics.com, your spot on the internet for the best comic book and entertainment-related columns, contests, features, reviews, news, resources, and more.
See you at New York.
That's right, New York Comic Con, here we come. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.